The Speris Legacy is a top-down action RPG in the vein of The Legend of Zelda, wherein we take up the mantle of, well, an ordinary farmer. We've had lifelong aspirations of adventuring, and finally get our wish when the king's traitorous, murderous son takes things one murder too far. Now we're tasked with finding said son and capturing him, but not before we're properly equipped, of course. And we don't get a weapon shop or obtain equipment from the king, no, he just tells us to bumble around and figure it out. And oh boy, do we bumble. The villagers offer some pretty vague advice like, hey, there's a locked door over there probably, and I swear I saw a sword somewhere around here, neither of which could prepare you for the task ahead. To obtain the sword, you must enter a random, rather ordinary home in the city square, loot it for a key, rub up against an invisible door next to the palace to use the key, then enter a room with ghostly foes and no clear way forward. It's only upon rubbing your face against the right side of a decorative stone that you activate a teleporter, which at last nets you the sword. Quite a first task. But you still can't leave the village without the shield, and that's an even greater undertaking. To get the shield, we have to break down the wall beside our house to access the Royal Hedge Maze, the first dungeon. And it is a proper dungeon, with traps, enemies, and puzzles. Oh, and lots of dead ends. So many dead ends. Most of the time, the way forward is the last place you'd look, tucked away in a far corner in a patch of flowers. At the end of the hedge maze, a switch awaits, and that switch unlocks a gate back in the middle of the maze. The only problem? You can't go backwards, so you have to make another loop of the whole thing. All of this was rather mentally taxing, but I did it all without a guide. The game drops you in deep without much direction and simply trusts you to figure it out. This baffled and infuriated many critics who said, and I quote, "The player is left constantly in a state of confusion about where you're supposed to be going and what goals you must achieve to get there." But I always found this criticism and criticisms like it entirely unmoving, particularly in contexts of games which are deliberately obtuse. The worst thing the absurd puzzles in the Speris Legacy do, I think, is ruin the surface-level immersion. But they also offer another, more enthralling kind of immersion in Substitute. Let's talk about the classic fantasy film Labyrinth for a moment. In Labyrinth, the spoiled and dead-average teenager Sarah is tasked with navigating an otherworldly labyrinth. Nothing in the labyrinth is what it seems, and the film's mantra is, don't take anything for granted. In order to overcome the obstacles before her, Sarah has to learn to think for herself, to challenge her preconceived notions of reality and become a stronger, wiser, more independent individual. Early on in the journey, she often whines, "It's not fair," and several characters deride her for her complaining. And eventually, she learns that complaining about the unfairness isn't beneficial, because things are the way they are. She's either going to grow up and solve the labyrinth, or give up and let her brother stay captured by goblins. In that same spirit, the puzzles in games like the Speris Legacy aren't really fair, no, but I don't think they have to be. I don't think games should always run on the same logic we expect in our daily lives. I had more fun figuring out the Speris Legacy's baffling mazes than I did playing any of the hand-holding titles of 2022. Because it inspired me to think in new ways. It kept my brain active and allowed me to experience what Sarah did, but in a far lower stakes environment. I want more of this stuff, not less of it.